Let's talk about the first episode of the Shin Nita arc and my first impressions of the arc in general. I'm going to be trying to, be short and concise with this so that we can get this video out as close to release of the actual, episode itself. So far, I like the episode. I think it's good. I don't think it's great. I think there are a handful of things that stop it from being, truly great in my eyes. But let's talk about that stuff. So first of all, the first thing I really liked was Mikuru. Surprisingly enough, in G, she was a very nothing character. She didn't really have much of a personality or much to do. She was only really there so we could kind of get some more exposition and stuff about Rive here and there. But even then, we got most of that from Shin, honestly. So yeah, she was kind of a nothing character in G, and here they've already given her a sizable personality, and I really liked that. She did a good job of kind of bouncing off the other characters and having these sorts of fun interactions. She had lots of really nice expressions, and she was just overall a really fun character to be around. In G, she was voiced by Michelle Molyneux in the English dub, and I'm really hoping that when this arc ends up getting an English dub as well, Michelle Molyneux ends up reprising the role, because I could see her having a lot of fun doing Mikuru's new personality. So that's the first thing I really, really liked. Something I didn't like, though, I didn't like Esuka that much. I don't hate her character overall. I think they could do some interesting stuff with her later on. I think how she's being handled in this first episode kind of flirts with, I guess, something I'm really dreading, and that's the ecchi tropes. Yeah. So basically what they've done here is, well, they have a couple of shots. The first of her in a swimsuit, and the second near the end of the episode of her in a bath. Neither of those really add much to the story. The first one is just a character saying she used to be a model. Okay. And the second one is her watching TV, which is a bit confusing to me. Why would you have her watching TV in the bath? To show how wealthy she is, I guess? I don't know. But, well, yeah, they put naked girls in the show. And then also, even worse, they had a scene introducing Shin Nita where he trips over from his skateboard and falls onto Esuka. And she, he's probably on top of her. They both fell over, and then they stare at each other and both start blushing because it's awkward. And if that sounds familiar to you, that's because that scene is in literally every anime ever made. I imagine, it wasn't even very funny the first time the very first anime ever made did it. It's not funny now. Even when you try to subvert the trope, which they didn't do this time, even when you try to subvert it, it's still not funny, because even the subversion is expected at this point. That's how overused the joke it is. And it's here for pandering, I guess. I guess it's for the people who are too, insecure about liking a card game advert. And so now they can pull up these scenes from this story arc and go, see, look, it is an adult anime. And I don't like that, because that kind of undermines a lot of the show itself. When you're explaining why you like a show, it should be, it should be because I like the story, I like the characters, I think they have cool interactions, I think that these action scenes are cool, I think the way they do the card fights are cool, and so on and so forth. Things that make the shows unique or just well executed. And I feel like these scenes, and especially using these scenes to justify, see, it's a proper adult show, don't call it kids' cartoons, is kind of undermining it, and it's a cheap trick. I don't care for it personally. And the worst part is it's in literally every anime ever. And one of the reasons I like card game anime so much is because it's one of the very few genres of anime that mainly stays away from that kind of thing. When you don't have ecchi pandering to rely on, you have to, actually have a good plot and characters to keep people interested. You can't just show half-naked ladies at them. So, yeah, minor point, I guess. I kind of hope they ease up on that later on. I know some people like it, and I'm not here to judge. I'm just giving my own personal opinions. So, I really liked Shin Nita himself. I was worried because he is a side character, and randomly taking a side character and shoving them and upgrading them to protagonist role it's a fine dance, I guess. Am I mixing up phrases here? I don't know. But it's a difficult thing to do because it doesn't always work. And there's a fine line between writing a good protagonist and writing a good side character. And trust me, there's a very big difference between a good protagonist and a good side character. And you know, switching characters from one to the other can be a dangerous thing. But luckily, Shin, I think he kind of works a little better as a protagonist so far. I'm not certain, of course, but because it's only been one episode, but I really like him. The first thing that he reminded me of was Joseph Joestar, in that he doesn't really take things seriously. He's very quick to joke and cover things up and not take things seriously. But then, of course, very deep down, you can obviously tell that the reason he jokes about this kind of stuff is indeed because he cares and he's trying to cover it up. And I like that character archetype. And I think it works well here, especially considering that one of my complaints with certain previous arcs of Vanguard is that it took itself too seriously. And so having a protagonist that adds a little bit of levity here, I think goes a long way. Of course, I hope he's serious during the moments where he needs to be, but I like the direction they're going with that. The card fight was great. I really like this card fight. If all of the card fights in the story arc are this kind of caliber, then thank God. Because, yeah, I like seeing good card fights, and this was a really fun one. I think that Shin has a really interesting and unique deck, and it's one that really takes advantage of the imaginary gifts in a unique way, and that's what I like. When you add a new mechanic to the game like this, it's something that should be explored, and you should be encouraged to do new and interesting things with them. That's one of the reasons why I really liked Legion, back when that was a thing, but I felt like it needed more to it. I felt like it needed more exploration because there's a lot you could, on paper, do with that mechanic, but they never really explored it very much. And so I really like the Genesis deck really taking advantage of the imaginary gifts in a new and fun way. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. So yeah, the card fight was really, really fun. Again, the overall establishing stuff was fairly decent. I think the overall premise is a little weak, but it's alright. So we get a flashback within this prequel story arc where Misaki's mother talks to Shinita and talks to him about how he needs to kind of stand on his own and learn to not live with them because they're not always going to be there for him. And while she's talking about this, the camera directly pans on baby Misaki. And, it's fairly obvious it's them talking about the idea that Misaki's parents die and now Shin needs to look after Misaki and, of course, the card shop. Establishing that stuff is great because, of course, this whole arc is about protecting the card shop and everything. And so we need to be given a reason to care, and connecting it to Misaki's parents isn't the worst way of doing that. The problem I have with it is a bit on the nose in execution. It's a bit like, yes, okay, why are these characters telling Shin that they might potentially die in future? I mean, they don't directly say that, I don't know, the execution's very weird. Because it just feels a bit heavy-handed and blunt. I think it could have been done a bit more subtly, I guess. But these characters basically just telling him that they may as well die soon, and then it cuts a few years later where they have died. Feels a bit convenient, and maybe it would have worked better if, the parents died of some kind of disease or whatever instead of a sudden car accident so that they actually knew the death was coming. But at the same time, I like the car accident death because that seems more out of nowhere and tragic. So I don't know how I would have fixed that scene. I would have just written it in a way that felt more subtle. Maybe instead of them talking about how we're not going to be here forever, instead they just talked about how much they love Misaki and how much she means to them and how she needs to always be kind of protected and kept an eye on and everything because there'd be nothing worse than something bad happening to her. Because that way they're not directly going, hey, we might die soon. And instead, they're enforcing the idea that, okay, this is why Shin really gives a shit about Misaki. I don't know, something like that would have worked better, I feel. But, I don't know, it's still a good scene overall, I guess. At the very least, I understand why it's there to kind of help set things up for later on. Again, another worry I have for this arc, and I guess it's not something that directly applies to this episode itself and more to just the overall arc, is again, it's a prequel arc, and this whole setup is about them protecting Card Capital, and we kind of already know that they end up protecting Card Capital. So either they play it straight and just have a straightforward story where we already know everything that's going to happen, or they try and have some kind of twist where, oh no, they don't actually succeed, but then some kind of Deus Ex Machina kicks in and Asuka can't actually take the card shop in the first place. Those are your two options, and there's only one other third option, and it's a third option that I really, 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 really hate. And it's one I don't think Bushiroad have even considered. And that's the idea that the plot twist to this arc is that it isn't actually set in the same timeline as the reboot. And it's set in its own standalone timeline where Shin does lose the card shop. And the plot twist is that we assume that it's set in the same timeline as the previous arcs we only just watched. But no, it isn't. And that's the twist. I hate that for multiple reasons, and that's why I'm going to choose to believe that it's not true, because again, I don't even think Bushiroad would have considered that one. So our other two options are, yes, they play it straight and have Shin actually protect the card shop, or they have some kind of twist where Shin fails, but it doesn't matter that Shin failed anyway because there's some legal loophole or whatever that they can take advantage of. I'm sure, again, if executed correctly, it'd still be entertaining, but it's cool to get more insight, I guess, into the past, but I don't know. And I think this applies to a sister cat as well. In this first episode, we get a fair amount of focus on the origin story of a sister cat and how Shin first met it and like adopted it as his own cat and everything. And to me, a sister cat worked because in the original, where you see the cat in the card shop sleeping around and stuff, you just by seeing that like visual image, you can infer a lot. You can infer that the owner of the card shop is really lax and doesn't really care too much about like the rules and everything, because I mean, who would let their pet in a store? And the fact that the cat's just sleeping around in the shop, it implies that this is a usual thing for it, and this is actually where the cat stays. And of course, you can imply, you know, the owner has a soft side to him because he likes cat. Actually showing us the origin of the cat kind of, you know, negates a lot of the cleverness of the visual storytelling there, and instead once again hits us over the head with, hey look, he's got a cat now. Why does he have a cat? To keep Asuka away? Okay, sure. I don't hate the idea of giving the cat a backstory like that, but I mean, all it does is lessen what we've already got, you know? Unlike Mikaru, who I was praising earlier, with Mikaru, they're actually doing new stuff with her that makes sense. And bringing her back does make sense because she was a character with a really good character design and everything that never really got given anything to do. And so I'm in favor of seeing more of her. Whereas the cat was more of a case of, here's a very quick visual representation of the card shop owner's personality. And so just by seeing a shot of the cat, you're like, okay, I understand a lot about this shop now and its owners. And so doing more of the cat kind of rubs me the wrong way, but again, maybe they'll do some interesting stuff with it down the road. So yeah, that's my thoughts of the first episode and the prequel series as a whole. I do have a bone to pick with the episode titling. They reset the episode number thing again, which is just going to get even more confusing for new viewers who just search up CardFight Vanguard episode 1 on YouTube, and the actual video is called Remind 1 CardFight Vanguard official animation, which makes it look like this is the very first episode of the anime, and to someone who knows nothing about CardFight Vanguard, they might click on that thinking it is, and boy, would they have an interesting introduction to Vanguard. Not necessarily a bad one, but an interesting one. I don't know if I'd recommend that. That's my thoughts of the Shinita arc so far, just one episode in, and I want to know what everyone else thinks so far. Of course, I do actually read the comments. I don't always reply to all of them, but I do read them. And yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to it. Again, I'm still fairly lukewarm because there are a few things that I'm actively looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Shin and more of Mikaru, but the other stuff like the ecchi and everything, I'm like, I could do without it. So yep, that's what I think of the Shinita arc so far. And join me later on where I probably talk about it some more because, I mean, that's kind of the point of this channel, eh?